Okay, good. Here's that. Welcome to this week's edition of the Muslim Street. You can find us at themuslimstreet.com. I am the host, Malik Aziz, along with my co-host, Art Mobley. And we got a great show that is going to take place today, hitting on some real heavy points. You can find us at www.themuslimstreet.com and, of course, across all social media, Facebook, Instagram, and we were on X, but I retweeted a quote by Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks, which is a very successful podcast. And they decided that they were going to suspend our account. They didn't suspend hers; they just suspended ours. I literally just retweeted something that she said, which was a strong condemnation of the Zionist entity that is controlling the American presidency, controlling the American Congress, and from what it seems like, they're controlling the Western world. Anyhow, on tap today,
they don't want black voices. You know, they don't want to hear it from a black man. You know,
this is the issue with them, and the real issue is, if I can just kind of piggyback off of Anna Kasparian. Earlier last week, she appeared on Candace Owens' podcast.
Mm-hmm.
As Candace as the host, and they were going back and forth on the Palestinian issue. And one of the things that I raised, as we see, and Candace Owens was part of the white supremacist right wing in this country. She was
right. You can't count her.
And one of the things that I want to caution, the audience and caution the people about as they move into the Palestinian space of exposing the genocide, the killing of thousands and thousands of children and leaving thousands and thousands of amputees. Okay. But they haven't given up their
grandmothers.
They haven't given up. Candace Owens hasn't given up anti-blackness.
We took her black card a long time ago. She has not had a black card for a while, bro. I'm sorry.
Well, no. So philosophically, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, even though they've came out, even Marjorie Taylor Greene have come out strong on the Palestinian struggle. There's still another bridge to cross, and we're going to dive into that with our guests. We have Imad Al-Turk and Candace Abdul-Tawwab from the Mississippi for a Just World project. This is a very exciting project because literally we have stated in the Pan-African movement that until we continue the link between the Palestinian oppression and the African oppression that's taking place not only on the African continent, but throughout the African diaspora, we will not achieve true liberation. Our liberation struggle has always been tied to the Palestinian struggle. It was tied to the Palestinian struggle when Africa emerged in 1960. The year 1960 was known as the year of Africa, where 2/3 of the African continent got their independence from colonial Europe. And in that arose voices like Kwame Nkrumah, who supported the liberation of Palestine. In it also arose on the Arab side, was the voice of Gamal Abdel Nasser, who supported Palestinian liberation. In it, in the African diaspora, people like Malcolm X, who supported the Palestinian struggle. It has always been that link. And if you ever hear anyone on any sides of that struggle, and I've been hearing it more on the ignorance of the Black American cause as they seek, nearness to extreme whiteness at any cost, they'll say, "Oh, that ain't our problem," or "No, we sitting this one out." What if you sitting what out? There's no sitting it out. Okay, your enemy is the same enemy as the Palestinian enemy. Okay, I tell you what we do. Like I was telling Art earlier, I was a quarterback. I had a college scholarship, and we moved strategically. I tell you what, let's let the Palestinians get them at their knees, and we'll get them at their chest. All right, at the same time, this is where we bring down white supremacy. But we don't bring down white supremacy by saying, "Oh, that's their situation." It's the same enemy. Malcolm understood that. Nelson Perlmutter, who headed the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith, hated Malcolm for his stand against Zionism and the oppression of the Palestinian people. So, having said that, the Mississippi for a Just World project in Jackson, Mississippi, back in October, Art, they hosted a prayer vigil that was honoring the lives of the Palestinians at the time, and that numbers has increased. Over 60,000 Palestinians killed by the Zionists, and that since October 23 to October 25, just in that 2-year period. There's been more. We're talking about children, thousands of children. We're talking about amputees. I mean, just incredible, right? But the Black struggle understood in Jackson, Mississippi, and one could argue that Jackson, Mississippi is sort of like the heartbeat of the civil rights movement. The heartbeat. Malcolm wanted to be there. There's no question about it, right? Kwame Ture was there, who on exit constantly channeled the Palestinian liberation struggle. So this connection, we have the executive director, Candace Abdul-Tawwab, and of course, our old colleague, Imad Turk, who's part of that project, and also the founder of the International Museum of Muslim Cultures down in Jackson, here to discuss that. I'll turn this over to Art, and he'll drive the conversation.
All right, well, let's just jump right into it and let our guests give us a little bit about their program, their project, and where they are right now. It's important, as you say, that we come together. We bring all of our voices together cumulatively from around the world and make the same statements, say the same things. It's absolutely critical at this day and time that we do this, because we're facing an opposition that does that very well. White supremacy sticks together, whether it's Anglo-American out of Europe, it's American in the US, or it's Zionists in Israel. They have a harmonic balance going on, and that's why they're so successful. So again, we need to step up our game and get together and move in concert. And Imad, if you would, I would really like to hear from you about this project in Mississippi and what you are asking the world to do.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. All the audience, Brother Malik and Brother Art, thank you for inviting us to speak to you today. Mississippi for a Just World is a human rights organization that was formed back in 2024. So we are going into our third year right now, and have done significant work to actually connect the African American struggle with the struggle for liberation in Palestine and really across the globe, wherever there's oppressed people. So I'm going to really yield to my dear sister Candace Abdul-Tawwab to maybe talk about the history. Then I can come back, maybe talk about a little bit more about the organization and where we're going.
All right.
Candace, please.
Hey, Sister Candace, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's a blessing to be here. As Brother Imad said, we are a human rights advocacy organization. We began as a grassroots movement, a small cohort of individuals who wanted to respond to the Palestinian genocide that began in October, well, a continuation overall. But the immediate response to activating community started October 2023. Thank goodness for media outlets such as TikTok and Instagram, where there was raw footage of, the devastation, the atrocities that were taking place. And as a Black woman, an African-American woman, a Southerner, a Mississippian, who had been raised here and knew the legacy of the human liberation movement that took place here, whose parents were born in segregation, who I was, taught by professors who were active in the dismantling of apartheid in South Africa. I am a student of the human liberation movement, right? And so myself and two other of my team members got together and activated community to respond. What started off as a protest grew into an entire movement that that was statewide. And so we resourced and empowered community and students to respond, whether it be a direct action, whether it be, pushing for fair legislation and not investing in Israel, investing our, up to $50 million as is within the bill now, to the state of Israel, while we are the poorest state in the nation, and we're going without the things that Israeli citizens have nationwide. We do not have healthcare. We do not have free education. We do not have free housing, things that they already have. And on top of that, they are committing a genocide, which is absolutely appalling as a human being. And so
those things are present in Israel. Israel
they have it all.
Subsidize all of those things. They have
Yes.
all of those services at the expense of the American taxpayer.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so knowing that and being rooted in our legacy as Black Southerners, as Mississippians, as people who are oppressed globally, we knew we needed to do something. We needed to educate the masses. We needed to mobilize the masses. We knew that we have our own struggles here in the U.S. as Black folks and people of color. We knew that our struggles are interconnected with Palestinians and all oppressed people globally. So this was our opportunity. This was our opportunity to unite. This was a unifier for us through many communities. And so we have grown many, many programs. We've done beautiful, powerful work in the time that we have existed. We have a lot of partnerships with other social justice organizations here in the state of Mississippi. And so we're just moving. We're doing what we need to do to make a difference.
We're going to get into more of those programs that you work with and the results. We want to hear your success and how those things are going. I know Malik, you're itching to say something there, and I want to give you a chance to.
Just a note. Right now in Congress, they're putting forth trying to advance a plan to deeply integrate the American and Israeli military-industrial bases. A proposal for 2027 inside of the defense bill sets up an initiative that will shift the relationships from just traditional aid toward Israel, which America has been funding that thing, like a baby. Feeds off of the breast of his mother to survive. Now they're moving toward a fusion of weapons, military research, production, data sharing. It sounds to me like the Israeli military will become the United States military.
They work in concert, like I mentioned before. All of them work in concert. This is an international network of people who are acting in concert, predominantly, again, because of white supremacy and racism. They're even trying to incorporate South African they're going back to the real old apartheid and drawing people into the U.S.
Yeah, so that is they're literally setting up a situation that if this bill goes through and be part of that proposed defense bill for 2027, they're literally saying to you, me, Candace, and Art that you're going to fund the Israelis.
Oh yeah, we've always been for it. Ahmed, you were getting ready.
Really, what I wanted to say specifically about this proposed bill, that the Israeli lobby and the white supremacist system that we have in the United States and across the Western Hemisphere and in Israel, I think they're recognizing now that the American public is waking up about the continued funding of a genocidal state, and they don't want to do this. So they recognize that at some point in the future that the public pressure is going to be on the congressional staff and the White House to stop that $3.8 billion of annual funding that we collectively as taxpayers are paying for. So this is their way to actually go around the American public. They're saying,
Yeah.
okay, we're not going to provide direct funding to them, but we're going to integrate the militaries. So basically, nobody can see, and there's not a report on this, that we're giving him $3.8 billion, but we're probably giving him a lot more through the integration of this military system.
Sure.
So I think what I really wanted to kind of emphasize, what we're fighting is a system that created all of these issues, both in the United States, in the Western world, and in Israel.
Yeah.
To systematically use white supremacy and Jewish supremacy to dehumanize other people.
Yeah.
Whether here it's African Americans or brown and black people, or in the case of Palestine, the Palestinian population. So the system itself really needs to be dismantled. It needs to be dismantled through a concerted effort on the political advocacy side, on fighting Christian Zionism that supports equally as much as the government does, to try to dismantle those awful systems, similar to the Christian Zionism and what happened in the African American struggle when they used the theology to justify lynching African Americans and murdering him and raping him in the name of white supremacy. This is not the theology, the correct theology. It's the same white supremacist Christian theology that they used in South Africa to justify the apartheid system.
Absolutely.
So we have to dismantle all of these systems of power that got us to where we are today, and we cannot do it alone. Because what I wanted to say, just a closing, and I'll get back to you, Art. What is we need to recognize as Palestinians, as brown people, and as black people, that our struggle is one, and we collectively are the majority of the world. We're not the minority. The minority are the white supremacist groups. Absolutely. They are dividing us, and that's why it's extremely important for the African American struggle and the struggle of brown people across the world, including the Palestinian struggle, are one and the same, and we need to unite our effort to dismantle these systems of oppressions.
Well, blatantly, these people have taken land, principally, from African people, from people in not just Palestine, but in fact, that whole region. And I didn't want to just jump in a moment here to the Greater Israel Project. And I know we're all familiar with the Greater Israel Project and what Israel is attempting to do. And we need to put that on blast. We need to talk about that. We need to educate people about what they're doing, because what they're doing is exactly what indicates where they're going and what they're trying to do and why we need to come together and stand against it. But you're listening to the Muslim Street, and the executive director, Malik Aziz, is right there in his bookshelf. And we're glad for his work and what he's doing. We want to expand this, and we want you to hit the like button, subscribe, share this particular podcast so that it grows and that we get the synergy that we need so that it can be a part of this whole internet revolution that's bringing this kind of information to the fore and is changing this world and giving white supremacists a fit, because they thought they were going to continue to control the narratives and be able to stand on the necks of everybody else in the world, and that was going to be in perpetuity. It's not going to happen. But let's talk about the Greater Israel Project a bit. We always have seen the Jewish flag, or the flag of Israel, or the Zionist flag. I don't know what they want to call it. I'll leave that to them. They can sort that out themselves. But it has two blue bars on either side of the Star of David, and they claim that those bars, never explained it to us before, but now they tell us that those bars represent rivers. And the rivers that those represent are the Nile River and the Euphrates River. That's those blue bars on the Israeli flag. And they believe that they have a God-given right to all the land in between those areas, which, by the way, encompasses much of Arabia, all of Jordan, all of Palestine, all of Lebanon, parts of Turkey, parts of Iraq, Kuwait, and all the way down to almost Mecca. It takes in Medina. Every Muslim in the world should be totally understanding, at least, of what this map represents and what these people are planning right in front of our face, right in front of our eyes. I mean, they claiming the pyramids, I mean, every time I see that map, it gets bigger. But Ahmad, tell us some of your observations about the Greater Israel Project.
So the Greater Israel Project is not a new initiative. This has been the plan of the Western world, who created the colonial regime in the middle of the Middle East. Palestine is in the heart of the world as a whole, and it actually strategically located where it controlled all the access to navigation, access of trade, access of oil. So all of the resources of the Middle East, the colonial powers wanted to make sure to do two things. One is that they control it through their agent state that they're created, but secondarily to keep the Muslim world divided. And of course, by dividing him, by creating this cancer in the center of the Muslim world, this cancer is actually spreading. So there is the Zionist movement, unfortunately, have infected not only Christians, but also there is Muslim Zionists that also support this project. Look at what's happening in the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and some of the other states that actually normalized relationships.
We'll get into some
again,
of
this is the Greater Israel Project. The idea was to actually control the Middle East from the Euphrates to the Nile, which includes a significant portion of Egypt. It includes a good portion of Saudi Arabia, of Syria, of all of Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan, part of Iraq, and part of Turkey.
They plan to take over all of it, is essentially. They're going to control at least access to all of it, including Mecca.
Yeah, and this is, they are saying this publicly, and even in the recent interview that Tucker Carlson had with the American ambassador, Mike Huckabee, to Israel, he basically asked him the question, what is this God's right to actually give the whole entire area from the Euphrates to the Nile? And his response, let them take it all. So this is actually with the endorsement of the West. So we have to understand as Muslims, as human beings, that these offensive activities that Israel is doing today, blatantly attacking Lebanon and committing genocides and ethnic cleansings of the Lebanese, taking property in Syria. This expansion project to achieve the Greater Israel has begun. They are every day they're actually confiscating hundreds of acres of property from the Palestinians in the West Bank.
Well,
even with the ceasefire in Gaza, they still control. Although the ceasefire was supposed to have the Israelis withdraw fully from Gaza, today they control 60% of it, and the prime minister of that evil state recently stated that our goal now is to get into 70%, and that's what he instructed. That's why they're still bombing the Palestinians.
But this always brings up unintended consequences, and they miscalculated on this one because they didn't factor in Iran and what Iran's response would be to their entire charade and their expansion dreams and nonsense. Iran represents the Persian Empire, which is thousands of years old. and Persia has never been conquered by anyone outside. And it's due to certainly its topography and its geography, but it also has a very cavernous underground that people are getting a little bit of a taste of. They are underground like ants, manufacturing things that are unbelievable in quantities that go far beyond what people can perceive on the surface, because they are Persia and they're not going to be denied. China certainly has always emphasized its defense and has protected itself culturally for many of thousands of years. And Africa has some of the oldest civilizations in the world. 18,000 years there was an African civilization that survived long before the Greek and the Roman empires and some of the empires of the middle, what they call the Middle East. We call it Northeast Africa. So Candace, welcome back. I missed you there for a moment.
Yeah, all right, I got a question. I got a question for Candace.
Okay.
For the Palestinian struggle, what has been clear, I mentioned the aforementioned kind of podcasters and journalists. They were all women. Literally, Candace, women all around the world on this issue of Palestinian genocide has entered the chat. What do you attribute this to?
Well, I think, historically, with any liberation movement, women are at the forefront. You're going to see student activists and you're going to see women. And I think that's because women have been historically subjected to oppressive systems naturally, especially when it's within like a patriarchal system. And so it is an innate response to want to dismantle any harmful system that is oppressing and subjecting any human being to any form of brutality. And so that to me is a natural response for women. We are mothers, we are caretakers of humanity. We are the first teacher of any child, right? So I think that's like a natural response. And so it is not surprising. It is not surprising. You learn everything from your mother or the mother figure.
Absolutely. Candace, you heard some of the discussion that we had about the Greater Israel Project, this whole master plan to essentially take huge areas and swaths of Northeast Africa, including, as Imad just mentioned, from Egypt all the way to Iraq and even further. What do you take away from the Greater Israel Project?
This to me, this is, when you have imperialistic societies, it is a cancer to humanity. Mm-hmm. So they are moving in a way that this is not surprising. I think it's important for all folks to be students of history, all folks to be observant of, a people who move in a way that their pride, their ego is front and center. Mm-hmm. And so this isn't a surprising thing to a Black person, right? We know what it is. We know what we can recognize it. We have a unique lens to being able to recognize when, you start small and then you grow out, and then you put in rules and regulations and, so that you are the command, you are the top, you decide yeah.
That's an excellent point. Black people have lived with this kind of exploitation, land grabs, for hundreds of years. And I often hear people in the Palestinian movement who say, well, where are Black people on this? And no, we're there. We do support you. We understand it intimately. because of what, and in light of what Candace has just said, we have that background. We know what apartheid is. You can call it apartheid, but it's actually, Bishop Tutu told me personally that you pronounce it apartheid. And that's the way it is pronounced because of its symbolism and its metaphorical syntax. But it meant, and it means literally apart and hate. And if you hate someone, you want to be apart from them. This is the result of that. And that's just an important feature that I've always carried with me along the route. I was in South Africa. I was one of the monitors for the election of Nelson Mandela and the transition from apartheid to liberation. And we still have a lot of transition to go through in Africa. But I want to step back into Palestine briefly. Palestine before 1948 had thousands and thousands of Black people who lived in that population, and that entire area was peopled by Black people for thousands of years. The original Jews, the original Hebrews were peopled from that area who still have not only DNA, but cultural history, and they have a history, so much so that Gabon Nasser said, we'll never recognize you, Israel, as being a legitimate state because you left here Black and you came back white. That doesn't happen. That can't physically happen. That may be an aside story in all of this, but I bring that up just to say that African people, dark people, have been in this area. And how do we get a state that looks like Iowa in the middle of all of this Blackness, a sea of black and brownness, and they claim that it's their land, God gave it to them, and they have this ancient right to exist in that space, in that land. It's a typical thing, but Imad, what do you say about that?
What I say is that really you have to look at not only the historical context that Palestinians go back thousands of years into that land before actually Judaism was even a religion. But also what we have to understand, even from a religious context, that Prophet Abraham, peace and blessing be upon him, had two branches, from the Jewish branch and the Muslim branch, through the two religions that evolved as a result of the Abrahamic faith. So Moses, was the leader of the Jewish community. Many of the people who lived, who are Canaanites at the time, basically became Jews. Mm-hmm. And then when Prophet Jesus, peace and blessing be upon him, when he came, a good portion of those same people basically reverted to Christianity. Mm-hmm. And then when Islam came, the same group of people mostly became Muslims.
Yes.
So before 1948, or in the beginning of 1900s, before the Zionist movement actually started in Europe, there was only probably about 2% of the population were indigenous Jews, Palestinians. And there was probably about 20% indigenous Christian Palestinians. Mm-hmm. And the remainder, 80 plus or minus percentage was Palestinian Muslims.
Yes.
They lived together in harmony and peace. They traded with each other. They intermarried. They had very...
Absolutely. And people don't understand that before 48, there were Jews, Muslims, Christians in Palestine. They lived together in harmony. And as you say, even intermarried.
Absolutely. So really, I mean, I have a lot of friends who are Christian Palestinians, and many of them are married, interchange marriage with Muslims, and they do this regularly. There's no divisions really from when it comes to Palestinians, Christians, Muslims, and the original Jews who came there. But what transpired really in the beginning of the 1900s, when the Zionist movement started, really in the 1890s, is that they wanted to create a homeland in Palestine by ethnically cleanse all the Palestinians. And who are these Jews that are actually controlling Israel today? They came from Poland, they came from Ukraine, they came from Russia, they came from the Western Europe and Eastern Europe.
Yes.
So none of them actually are indigenous populations.
Exactly.
And that's what we need to really understand. If you, I think the example that you used, if you look at the government of Israel today, it's like you are in Iowa, mostly white Europeans that are ruling it, not indigenous people.
Yes.
Because of the migrations and the British mandate and the colonial powers, they allowed migrations of Jews. And of course, the ones that actually hate Jews, that are anti-Semites, are the Europeans who actually been kicking Jews out of their land for hundreds of years, even before the Zionist movement started. So they saw an opportunity to create two things. One is to create a colonial power in the center of the Middle East, so they can control its resources, and secondarily to get rid of the Jewish problem in Europe. So they allowed heavy migration. The British allowed heavy migrations where between 1900, when there was only 2% of indigenous Jews who are Palestinians, by the time 1948 came, 37% of the population were European, mostly European Jews that came through the migration process.
Right. And they also came through a process of joining the religion later on after the fact. They essentially just, what do you call that when you join a religion? Converts. Yes. Converts. And speaking of converts, of course, we want you to convert to listening to the Muslim Street. And Malik, give us a bit of wisdom from your standpoint as you listen to this.
Yeah, I had a question actually for Candace. I don't know if Candace has dropped off, but I'm sure.
I'm here. I don't know. I lost connection with the camera, but I am here.
No problem. So one of the things that I brought up in the introduction, Candace, and what will remain important to this struggle, and that's as we'll be talking about on the show, is the connection between the African liberation struggle worldwide and the Palestinian struggle. In 1984, in Chicago, I was speaking at a youth conference back in my infant days. But there was at the conference, it ended up in McCormick Place, 1984, February. It was an international conference. And on that international conference was the presence of an organization that was down in Mississippi, led by Mario Belli and Chokwe Lumumba, the Republic of New Africa.
Yes.
On the theme of that panel, which was sponsored by Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, over 5,000 people attended a Saturday afternoon conference. Keynote speaker, we had Michael Manley, former president of Jamaica. He spoke. Several members of the PLO, several members of the El Jamahiriya and the Libyan struggle. There was a large Arab and Black presence fighting for that liberation. And the point I'm going to make here, also, the strongest congresswoman, and they don't make them like this anymore. Shirley Chisholm was the keynote speaker, and I got to tell you something. I have never heard that much militancy in my life. You know what I mean? I was like, "What's going on here?" You definitely not going to hear out of somebody like Jasmine Crockett or Kamala Harris today. They didn't talk like that. But Mario Abdelli said in his introduction, he said that he was, over the last couple of years, planning a conference like this, and he points to Minister Farrakhan, that looks like you've already pulled it together. And what he was talking about, out of Mississippi, the Republic of New Africa, that they were planning to put together an international conference that connected the Palestinian struggle and the Black struggle in the United States.
I was looking at a map of the Republic of New Africa the other day, the states that had been kind of proposed, but Candace, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mentioned my parents. I mentioned that I am a child of parents that were born in segregation, and I mentioned that I'm a student of college professors that, were active in the dismantling of South African apartheid. What I did not mention was that my entire childhood, my entire life in Mississippi, I was, the Chokwe Lumumba, the Lumumba family. They were, additional parents to me. I was raised in very close proximity to the Black radical tradition. And, I learned so much. And it molded me into the person that I am today and the person that I grew to become. And it was within the walls of the Lumumba family's house where I learned about the international struggle and for liberation, and so it is not surprising to me. It's disappointing to me that we are still fighting for liberation for ourselves as Black folks and within the world. My very first protest as a student in Pennsylvania at Lincoln University, the first HBCU to exist, was in DC. I was 19 years old, and it was for the Palestinian struggle. It is where I learned the words "free Palestine" at 19 years old, and I am still saying the same thing at 46 years old now.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, this struggle has not ended. As Africans always say, "A luta continua," which means the struggle continues, and that goes back to the days of Amilcar Cabral and the Portuguese movement of Portuguese colonies in Africa, but certainly goes back to Marcus Garvey and goes back all the way to the days of slavery in America throughout the country.
Right.
So it's important for us to emphasize that. It's important for us to continue to organize conferences and to organize such things that bring education to our people. It is going to become it has become and will continue to be difficult to pull those kinds of things together. But in spite of everybody else and what everybody else is thinking and saying, African people in America have to move on their own to organize and make sure that their people are reached and this kind of education succeeds, because nothing happens without education. Organization is the next step, and we have to get to that. But we first have to make sure people are educated. And the Palestinian situation, what's going on with Iran and the pressure that is put on the Zionist state, but not only the Zionist state through its American-backed state in the U.S. militarily has been devastating. They've wiped out nearly all of the bases that were in those countries that were posturing themselves as outposts, essentially. That's what Israel was for the U.S. to have a base in that area. That, from the inception, Israel was designed as a military base for the United States, right in the middle of that area, the key juncture where Africa, Asia, and Europe came together. They purposefully did that, and they needed to occupy it and people it with people who were like-minded, and that's why they brought people down from Poland, and they brought intentionally Anglo people down to essentially populate that area. And they'll tell you all kinds of other mysterious notions of nonsense, but that is why they exist. Bahrain, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, they exist only as gas stations. They're pumping oil out and they just want to do it under another name. And they're not even real countries. We know and we understand that. But this is part of their game. This is part of their exploitive game. And Iran has put all of them on notice with ballistic rockets that have hit those bases in those countries. They're not trying to hurt people. They're not trying to target people. They're very compassionate in the way Iran has prosecuted their war. They are there to drive out U.S. military bases because those U.S. military bases are going to continue to be staging areas for continued attacks on Iran. The U.S. just attacks Iran through Israel at will, anytime it wants, the Iranian people and the Iranian land. So to prevent that from going forward and continuing, Iran is struck back. And they've struck very hard at Israel. Israel is a very small country, very limited targets in that country. You can hit anything of credible value in Israel very easily. So they are sitting ducks, essentially, for some group and for someone who had the audacity to start the war in the first place. They threw the first rock. So, Ahmad, help us understand what is going on in not only Israel, but these surrounding little sheikdoms that I'm alluding to.
I really would like to start with the Palestinian sumud and steadfastness, and then talk about the resistance movement, which include not only the Palestinians, but also the Lebanese resistance, the Yemeni, the Houthis, and Iran, because all of those are resistant groups. Of course, Iran as a country is more than just a resistant group that basically are fighting for not only their survival, but really fighting for changing the narrative. I want to say that the October 7th event, historians are going to look at this 20, 30 years ago, actually was the spark that is going to change the geopolitics, not only of the Middle East, but the entire world. And we really have to understand the courageous nature of the Palestinians in Gaza that have stood firm for almost, now the siege in Gaza has been ongoing for almost 3 years, and the genocide and the ethnic cleansing of the people. Yet their steadfastness did not allow not only Israel, but all of the military powers of the world, the Western world, including the United States, Britain, France, Germany, and others have provided significant support to fight 25,000 Palestinians who were fighting that fight. And they're still standing today, and today they're probably stronger than what they was before. So this is, first we have to understand that this resistance, the steadfastness and the resilience of the Palestinian people made an example and exposed the entire West, the entire Western world, not only to the Arab population, but also to the Western population. That's why you saw demonstrations of millions and millions of people, tens of millions of people across the world who support the Palestinian position for liberation and for human rights and dignity. So this was the spark of what's happening today, that actually will ultimately change the nature of the Middle East, not to the way that Israel and the United States and the West want, because ultimately what they want is basically a Greater Israel project. But the Greater Israel project has begun to be dismantled by the Hamas resistance. And then, of course, you had the Yemeni Houthi get involved in this. The Lebanese resistance with Hezbollah began this process. And finally, the arrogance of the Israelis and the American administrations, they were not satisfied with what they've done and all of the hundreds of thousands of people that they killed and the millions of people that they displaced in that region, not only since October 7th, but what they've been doing for the last 25 years, from the Iraq war to the Libya to the Syria to Somalia, Sudan, Afghanistan, you name it, those 6-7 countries that also have been destroyed. Not only they were not satisfied with all of this, they wanted to actually pick a fight with Iran and really the
Big mistake.
pretext of nuclear disarmament.
Mm-hmm.
The United States had an agreement with Iran that covers the nuclear topic. They tore it up. They tore it up because really their ambition is not to. They wanted to destroy Iran and then ultimately destroy any country in the Middle East that could stand up to Israel.
Exactly.
So today, even if you listen to the Israelis politicians, they're saying that Turkey is going to be the new Iran and Egypt is going to be the new Iran.
Yes.
So they're preparing.
Turkey's next, and then Egypt. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is their expansionist activities.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the steadfastness of the Palestinians and the Lebanese and the Houthi resistance, and now today the steadfastness of the Iranian regime, basically saying we're not going to surrender to the United States and to Israel and the Western desires. We're going to stand firm, and they showed because of their preparedness. For the last 47 years that they've been attacked by the United States, they've been sanctioned, all of the things that's been happening since the revolution in 1979 by the Iranians.
Yes.
So now the equation is shifting, and for the first time, the United States and Israel are asking for a ceasefire, not the other way around. And
Right.
Iran is saying, we will have a ceasefire if we meet our goals. Basically, you have to pay reparation for the war. You have to unfreeze all of our assets that you stole from us. We're going to have a freedom of access in the Strait of Hormuz. And we have the right to enrich in our own land. This is under international law. We are allowed to do this. And finally, they want the United States to get the hell out of the Middle East.
Yes.
After they destroyed their bases. So I think the dynamics and the geopolitical balance is going to be changing. And even the public opinion in the United States now is shifting. There's more support for the Palestinians. There's even support for against the Iran war. In the majority of the American public are against it.
Yes.
So I think you're going to see the arrogance of the U.S. and the beginning of the crumbling of the Greater Israel Project, of the Israel state, and of the United States empire.
Exactly. And this is an existential battle as far as the Iranians are concerned. It is for their survival. If they don't do exactly what you've just described, then they are going to just, I think, doom its own future and doom its people to more slaughter and just at will attacks from the Zionist state and the U.S. through the Zionist state, which is that's America's naughty little baby in the Middle East, is Israel, and always has been, and it's just a bad spawn. But Iran understands the importance and the critical nature of what they have to do, the job that they have to do, and they are going to eliminate the U.S. from the area because they have to. And it's the U.S.'s fault. Donald Trump, you put your hand in the fire, you got burned. And you can't put it back in there, but your biscuits are just toast.
And you asked about the Arab sheikdoms, the
God.
Arabians and Iran and Dubai, United Arab Emirates and the others. I think they are also strategically miscalculated because they thought having American bases in their land is going to protect them.
Yes.
What they discovered is actually the American bases are a liability to them.
Yes.
So ultimately they're going to have to weigh what do they do after the war ends.
Oh, they are so toast. They are so done. Iran essentially has taken over the entire area with what it's done, and it has a right, and it should completely control the area, including Israel. I think it's thankfully because the UAE is involved, that has shut down the pipeline of weaponry into Sudan and funding into Sudan and what is going on there to divide Sudan. So this is a blessing for African people. And I know we only have a couple of minutes left here. But I wanted just to kind of project. We can continue this next week.
Yeah.
And I would love to.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to, in the last few minutes that we have, kind of set up Imad and Candace, what we do over here at the Muslim Street. We're just going to all talk, but we're also into projects and planning. The great mayor and revolutionary Chokwe Lumumba, prior to his death, was very interested in making Jackson, Mississippi, sort of the center point for the Black struggle in this country. Back during the 1920s all the way through the 1960s, it was Harlem, New York. We had Garvey, and then we had Malcolm. And when that was destroyed and defeated, the Black Liberation struggle, the Black Liberation Army was defeated in the early 1970s. Harlem, the Panther 21, Harlem, it moved toward Chicago in the 1980s. In the 1980s, we had the headquarters of the National Black United Front with Dr. Conrad Worrell. We had the headquarters of the Nation of Islam with Minister Louis Farrakhan. We had the headquarters of Operation Push and Rainbow Coalition with the Reverend Jesse Jackson, the African community of Chicago with Dr. Anderson Thompson. So the focus was in Chicago. I mean, it's just too much. It was a whole lot of revolutionary activity going on there, right?
Yep.
Now, with Chokwe, Lumumba was proposing that new home and focal point for this country be Jackson, Mississippi. Revolutionaries all over this country were talking about moving there. You see these what they call these team where they're rushing into a certain park or something. We're going to rush into Jackson, Mississippi, and make that our home and put up the flag of African liberation, Palestinian liberation, anybody else's liberation was going to be there. What I'm proposing, Imad and Candace, is an extension of a roundtable discussion strategy session at the Mississippi for a Just World project sometime later this month or sometime in July, that we pull together this coalition that was left hanging by the death of Chokwe Lumumba. There's an anniversary coming up in June 16, 1966. Something that happened in Greenwood, Mississippi, the March Against Fear, led by SNCC and Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael. And what happened there, we come up on the 60th anniversary of that. What happened there that was significant to what we're talking about now, and Jackson and Mississippi becoming the new focal point for African liberation in this country, is that it was the introduction of the slogan Black Power, which took over at least the next decade of that struggle. So we would like to come to Muslim Street. Would like to come down to Jackson, meet and form a roundtable discussion, bring others, a strategy session with the Mississippi for a Just World project, and talk about next steps in lieu of the spirit of Chokwe Lumumba.
Absolutely. And, we definitely want to continue with supporting Palestine and bringing it back to the state that it should be. But we also want to not miss an opportunity to talk about Cuba. And the U.S. is getting ready to distract from what's going on in that part of the world, in the Middle East, and are going to divert their attention to Cuba, and they're going to try and devastate Cuba. Cuba is a country that is 70% Black, and we need to stand up for Cuba in this country in a big way to try and prevent that military just bloodbath from happening in Cuba. Go ahead and wrap us up, Malik.
Yeah, you've been listening to the Muslim Street. I want to thank Imad Al-Turk and Candace Abdul Tawab, the Mississippi for a Just World project, for a timely discussion, rigorous information that was delivered here. We have something to build on, again, in the spirit of Chokwe Lumumba, of Mario Badeli, and Republican New Africa down in Jackson. I think that Jackson has the opportunity, Mississippi has an opportunity to be the new focal point of the liberation movement in this country. The tide is set. And there's no home right now for the liberation struggle. We can't point to anywhere in the country, just as I pointed to Garvey in the 20s, Malcolm in the 60s, moving into the 70s with Black Liberation Army. And of course, I already discussed what happened in the 80s and 90s. It was clear that Chicago was at home. There is no home right now. I'm proposing that Jackson be that home. And again, you've been listening to the Muslim Street.
Jackson's got those fried green tomatoes too, man. I mean, there's no place else in the country.
What you don't know about Jackson, bro, is that Jackson is that's like Chicago. And
I just know what I'm talking about.
I mean, Chicago is North Mississippi. That's really what it is. I want to say very quickly, those existed because of the ethnic cleansing that was taking place in the South. Exactly. What we call the Great Migration Movement. That was actually a form of ethnic cleansing.
Yeah. That's a very, very critical point that was made there, and that connection to everything in the context of struggle. Black people were not only as they say, the narrative fleeing the fear of the Ku Klux Klan and lynches, but also chasing factory jobs up in the North. It was more than that. There was a brain drain that went on, a resource drain that went on in that period, and kind of left us there with this scattered situation. Absolutely. So again, something that we should build on as we close out this session. And I think, Candace, I just want to thank you. Thank you, Brother Matt. And you should be hearing from us. Art, we need you down in Jackson.
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing but a plane ticket. Right. Right down there.
Yeah, so it's for a strategy session, and let's continue this. Again, you've been listening to the Muslim Street on behalf of Lance Scurv and the Lance Scurv show, producing us out of Accra, Ghana. Art Mobley, founding member of the National Association for Black Journalists. Again, thanks Candace Abdul-Wahab and Imad Turk from Mississippi for the World Project. And you can find us at www.themuslimstreet.com. I am Malik Aziz. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.